I never thought something like this could happen to me. My life was ordinary, boring even. But one evening, everything changed. It started with my dog, Marley. He was my best friend, a loyal Labrador who had been by my side through everything. But that night, I learned that even the closest companions could become strangers. It was late, around 10 p.m., when I got home. Rain poured heavily, and I was soaked by the time I ran from the car to the front door. The house greeted me with silence. And that was strange. Marley always greeted me too. He'd rush to the door, wagging his tail like it was the happiest moment of his day. But tonight, there was no sign of him. "Marley," I called, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet house. "Where are you, buddy?" Nothing. Just the steady drum of rain against the windows. My first thought was that he might be asleep. Maybe the storm spooked him, and he was hiding under the bed, like he sometimes did when thunder got too loud. I hung my wet jacket by the door and walked into the living room. That's when I saw him. He was sitting on the rug, perfectly still, staring at me. Normally his eyes would light up with excitement, but now they looked wrong. Empty, almost. Like he wasn't really looking at me, but through me. "Hey boy, what's up?" I crouched down to pet him. He didn't move. His tail didn't wag, and his body didn't flinch. He just stared. The coldest shiver ran down my spine, but I shook it off. Maybe he wasn't feeling well. I knelt beside him, trying to meet his gaze. That's when I noticed his eyes. They weren't the warm brown I knew so well. The whites were tinged with red, and his pupils were dilated to the point where his eyes looked black. "Are you sick, buddy?" I whispered, trying to keep my voice calm. Marley tilted his head slightly and let out a noise, a low, guttural growl that didn't sound like him. It wasn't threatening, though. It sounded wrong, like it came from somewhere deeper than his throat. I stood up, my heart pounding. "Okay, maybe you ate something bad. Let's check your food." I walked to the kitchen, my steps echoing through the house. His food and water bowls were untouched. That was even stranger. Marley never skipped a meal. When I turned back, I froze. Marley wasn't on the rug anymore. He was standing in the far corner of the living room, his back to me. I didn't hear him move. He just was there. "Marley?" I called softly. He didn't respond. I stepped closer, then he slowly turned his head toward me. His body remained facing the wall, but his neck twisted at an unnatural angle. His eyes locked onto mine with a piercing intensity that made me take a step back. "Okay, this is freaking me out," I muttered. I pulled out my phone and started searching for a 24-hour vet clinic. My hands were shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to dial the number. While it rang, I kept an eye on Marley. He was moving now, but his gait was strange, jerky, almost mechanical. He circled the room, his head still turned toward me. My breath caught in my throat as the house lights began to flicker. "Hello?" A cheerful voice answered on the other end of the line. "How can I help you?" Yeah," I stammered. "My dog? He's acting weird. He won't eat, he's not responding to me, and his eyes look..." I paused, glancing at Marley, who had stopped in the middle of the room. His shadow, cast by the flickering lamp, began to move independently. It stretched and twisted unnaturally, creeping along the walls like it had a life of its own. "His shadow," I whispered into the phone, my voice barely audible. "It's moving." The line went silent. Then, the cheerful tone on the other end was replaced by something colder. A new voice, flat and emotionless, spoke. "He's no longer yours." I dropped the phone in shock, and it clattered to the floor. My gaze snapped back to Marley, who was now standing closer, too close. His head was cocked at an unsettling angle, and his mouth was curled into what I can only describe as a human-like smile. Who are you?" I whispered, backing into the wall. Marley let out a sound, a deep, guttural laugh. Then he spoke. His voice was low and distorted, but unmistakably clear. "Didn't you call me?" I don't remember much after that. I ran out of the house, the rain soaking me to the bone as I stumbled through the dark streets. I didn't look back. I couldn't. The next day I returned, hoping it had all been a terrible nightmare. The house was quiet, eerily so. Marley was gone. There was no sign of him, no fur, no paw prints, nothing. It was like he had never been there. I called the police, telling them my dog was missing. They searched the house but found nothing unusual. One officer asked if I'd heard anything strange lately, maybe a prowler or an intruder. I didn't know what to say. How could I explain that the intruder was my own dog? For weeks, everything was fine. I told myself I was imagining things, that Marley had just run away and someone would find him. But deep down, I knew the truth. Sometimes, late at night, I hear it. A faint, low chuckle outside my door. And when I look into the darkness, I swear I see those eyes staring back at me. But it's not Marley anymore.